Over 4 years into the war, Ukraine is struggling, not least to recruit new soldiers.
Maybe some additional things like missiles will not go to Russia.
Мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Putin called this a special military operation, but it's clear this is a full-scale invasion.
Escalation in the Russia-Ukraine war.
The Russia-Ukraine war, Ukraine has blamed Russia.
The Russia-Ukraine war has...
Russia launched more than 40 missiles overnight.
Russia has carried out another major attack on Kyiv, Ukraine's...
On May 9th, 2026, Russia held its Victory Day parade, the one day a year built entirely around military pride. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, there were no tanks. Here's the uncomfortable question nobody in Moscow wants asked out loud. Is Russia, a nuclear superpower, a country of 140 million people, quietly losing a war it was supposed to win in a week? Because that's not an exaggeration. When this invasion began, Russian planners reportedly expected Kyiv to fall within 72 hours. That was more than 4 years ago. And here's the twist most coverage misses. Even if the answer to "is Russia losing" is yes, that doesn't mean this war is close to over. It might just mean we're watching the end of Chapter 2.
Поздравляю вас с Днем Победы, с нашим священным, светлым и самым главным праздником.
Russia launched more than 40 missiles overnight, killing and wounding people across Kyiv.
Start with a number that's hard to spin. In 2026, Russian forces have advanced at roughly 50 to 90 meters a day. During the Battle of the Somme in 1916, one of the slowest, deadliest offensives in modern history, troops still moved faster, at around 80 meters a day. Russia, with modern armor and air power, is now crawling slower than an army did over a century ago with trench shovels. And it's reversing, not just stalling. Russia's territorial holdings inside Ukraine shrank for the first time since August 2024. In April alone, the Institute for the Study of War documented Russia losing 116 square kilometers of previously held ground. Across 2 full years of grinding offensives, Russia has claimed a little over 2% additional territory in total. Put another way, an army that once expected total victory in a weekend has spent 2 years fighting for single-digit percentage gains on the map, and is now losing ground faster than it can take it.
We have always stated that we view any peaceful initiative positively and hope that the Kiev regime representatives will have a similar stance.
Тобто Росія відкинула не лише американську пропозицію повного і безумовного припинення вогню.
Independent tracking by Mediazona and BBC Russian has verified more than 213,000 individual Russian deaths. Western estimates, including wounded, place total casualties above 1 million. One research group puts it as high as 450,000 dead and 1.4 million wounded, a loss rate that likely now exceeds monthly recruitment. The money tells the same story. Oil and gas revenue, 42% of Russia's federal budget in 2022, has collapsed to just 22% by 2026. Rosneft's profits dropped 70% in 9 months. The 2026 budget was, in Russian analysts' own words, shot to pieces within 2 months, running a 1.72 trillion ruble deficit in January alone. Russia's national wealth fund, the reserve Putin draws on to cover the gap, is projected by Russia's own leading economists to be fully exhausted before the end of this year. Everyday Russians already spend 39% of household income on food, the highest share in 16 years. This is a country burning its reserves, financial and human, to stand still on a map. There's a third squeeze happening alongside the money and the casualties: people. By the end of 2024, Russian firms already reported a labor shortage of 2.2 million workers, with 70% of businesses saying they couldn't find enough staff. Defense production now competes directly with construction, agriculture, and transport for the same shrinking workforce. And every man sent to the front is a man not working in any of those industries. GDP growth, which ran as high as 4.1% in 2024 on the back of massive war spending, has decelerated to around 1.1% in 2026. Money, manpower, and territory, all three are moving in the wrong direction at once. But it would be dishonest to stop there, because Russia is not out of options. Sanctions have strained Russia's defense industry without breaking it. Researchers describe the trajectory as slow degradation, not collapse. Russia still has a vast domestic labor pool and a shadow fleet of tankers that keeps oil revenue flowing around sanctions. And out of 5 original strategic war goals, Russia still holds the one that matters most for any future negotiation: territorial control, however costly. Most importantly, a cornered Russia may be more dangerous, not less. Defense analysts warn the Kremlin is shifting toward cheaper hybrid warfare, sabotage, airspace violations, disinformation, as conventional options grow too expensive. One assessment estimated Russia could reconstitute enough force for a limited regional war near the Baltic within roughly 2 years of any Ukraine ceasefire. And here's a voice that should carry real weight in this conversation. Valery Zaluzhny, Ukraine's former commander-in-chief and now its ambassador to the UK, published a piece on July 8th warning against exactly the narrative this video has been building, calling the assumption that Russia has effectively lost the war a dangerous misreading. Zaluzhny's argument is that Ukraine's genuinely impressive tactical wins, the deep strikes, the refinery hits, don't change the deeper strategic reality. Neither side can currently deliver a knockout blow, and wars of attrition are decided by endurance, not headlines. Coming from the man who ran Ukraine's armed forces for 2 years, that's not a voice to wave away. Which brings us to the real point of this video.
Iron General.
Every time peace talks resume, it's treated like the finish line. It isn't, and both Kyiv and Moscow already know it because we've watched this exact cycle repeat within a single year. A US-brokered 3-day ceasefire in early May came with a prisoner swap of hundreds on each side, and Russia launched drone strikes before it had even technically begun. Putin announced his own 2-day ceasefire around World War II anniversary events, and both countries ended up observing different dates because neither would accept the other's proposed terms. Each pause has produced photo ops and prisoner exchanges, and each has collapsed within days into renewed strikes. That's not bad luck. That's a pattern. Trace the pattern back far enough, and the war everyone's watching now isn't the whole story. The 2014 annexation of Crimea and the Donbass conflict weren't a separate earlier war, they were the opening chapter of the same one. This current invasion is Chapter 2, and strategists on both sides are already quietly planning for what a Chapter 3 would look like. For Russia, the Kremlin has built its entire economy and political legitimacy around this fight. Backing out now, without something it can call victory, risks a level of internal instability the regime cannot afford. For Ukraine, survival means treating peace the way Israel treats its borders, never fully standing down, continuously modernizing, because the alternative is being caught unprepared for round 2. That's why any ceasefire on the table right now is best understood not as an ending, but as an intermission, a pause both sides intend to use to rebuild, rearm, and reposition, not to disarm.
I mean, it could be, it'd be nice. I'd like to see it stop. Russia, Ukraine, it's the worst thing since World War II in terms of life. 25,000 young soldiers every month. It's crazy.
Here's what makes this more than a prediction. It's an ideology already shaping policy on both sides. Russian ultranationalist philosopher Alexander Dugin, sometimes called Putin's brain for his influence on Kremlin thinking, has spent decades framing conflict with Ukraine not as a border dispute but as a civilizational struggle between Russian tradition and the Western liberal order. As far back as 2014, Dugin told the BBC directly that he believed war between Russia and Ukraine was inevitable. That's not hindsight. That's a decade-old prophecy that's now played out twice. On the Ukrainian side, Zaluzhny himself, the same voice urging caution about declaring Russia defeated, has spent months framing this war in almost identically existential terms from the other direction. In a column this May, he argued that halting the war without Ukraine achieving its goals would mean the collapse of the Russian state itself, concluding starkly that it is a war of attrition where survival itself means victory. That's the Israel comparison in practice. A small, encircled state that treats every ceasefire as temporary by design, never fully demobilizing, because the alternative is being caught unprepared when the next escalation comes. That doctrine shapes everything from conscription policy to how quickly a country rebuilds its defense industrial base the moment fighting pauses. And it's precisely the model Ukrainian strategists have pointed to as their own template going forward. When both sides' most influential strategic thinkers already believe the conflict is civilizational rather than territorial, ceasefires stop being resolutions. They become logistics breaks in a war neither side has ideologically agreed to end. So if a ceasefire arrives this year, what actually happens? Expect a sprint, not a stand down. Both nations are positioned to spend any peace racing to modernize forces, fortify strategic terrain like the Dnipro River line, and address the demographic damage this war has already done, because peacetime restrictions on rebuilding, mobilizing, and rearming are exactly the vulnerability neither side can afford to sit in for long. It's not just Kiev and Moscow preparing either. European nations are already investing heavily in their own future defense needs through initiatives like the Rearm Europe plan, aiming to unlock up to 800 billion euros in investment, having spent the last several years absorbing lessons directly from this battlefield. Ukraine, meanwhile, has increasingly positioned itself as a long-term security partner to the West rather than just an aid recipient, including active talks about exporting its own battle-tested drone technology and manufacturing expertise to American firms. That's not the posture of a country planning to stand down after a ceasefire. That's a country building the industrial base for round 3 while everyone else is still hoping for round 2 to end. Russia specifically faces a brutal timeline. Its financial reserves are projected to run dry before the end of 2026, which means whatever comes next, a real settlement or another hybrid warfare pivot, is likely to be decided by arithmetic as much as by Putin himself. Here's the proof this isn't just theory, because while diplomats talk about ceasefires, Ukraine's defense industry has quietly become one of the most productive weapons manufacturing operations on the planet. Ukraine's defense industrial capacity is now projected at $55 billion for 2026, 55 times higher than when the full-scale invasion began. Its drone industry alone is on track to produce over 8 million FPV drones this year, up from 4 million in 2025 and just 2.2 million the year before that. More than 500 companies now build drones inside Ukraine, and Ukrainian officials have told NATO lawmakers the country could scale to 20 million units a year if Allied funding keeps pace. For comparison, Russian industry, despite its size, is estimated to produce somewhere between 1.2 and 1.8 million drones annually. That's not a small gap. That's roughly a 5-to-1 production advantage in Ukraine's favor in the exact category of weapon now deciding this war. And it's already reshaping the battlefield, not just some hypothetical future one. Ukrainian long-range strikes have disabled roughly a quarter of Russia's oil refining capacity, hitting 8 of its 10 largest refineries since March, and disrupted fuel resupply routes through Crimea badly enough to cause fuel rationing across more than 50 Russian regions. This is what preparing for round 3 actually looks like in practice. Not press conferences and troop movements, but an industrial base being built specifically to outproduce an opponent over years, not weeks. No tanks at the parade, 50 meters a day on the front line, a reserve fund with months left before zero. And on the other side of the border, a drone industry outproducing Russia 5-to-1 and already reshaping what this war looks like. None of that means Russia has lost. It means Russia is running out of ways to keep pretending it's winning. And if history, ideology, and industrial output on both sides are any guide, this isn't the last chapter. It's the one right before intermission. If you want to understand what round 3 could look like, subscribe, because the moment this ceasefire talk turns real is the moment the next phase quietly begins.